songbirds, snakes, frogs. If it hums, tweets, hoots, slithers, or crawls as it crosses your path, it's on the air tonight. Kentucky Afield's Wildlife Diversity Call-In. Call us now with your questions at 1-800-944-4664. Financial support for Kentucky Afield is provided in part by Clay Tire of Grayson. Cars and trucks, farm or trail, providing Eastern Kentucky a grip on adventure wherever the road may lead. Paget Incorporated is a proud sponsor of Kentucky Afield, with the area's leading construction projects, telecommunications towers, sporting, business, and manufacturing facilities. Paget keeps business and community on the rise.
Tastes like victory.
Deal with Sugar over here. You good, dog? She's 3.5. She's with me all the time.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm Tim Farmer. Tonight we have a special 1-hour call-in show all about wildlife diversity in Kentucky. Number to call, 1-800-944-4664. Get your questions ready. To my left, the folks who will be answering your questions tonight. First up, we have Brooke Slack. She's a wildlife biologist. Thanks for being here. To her left, John McGregor, who's also a wildlife biologist. Thanks for being here. And Sunny Carr, who is a...
Used to be a wildlife biologist, now just a paper pusher.
Yeah, whatever. She's a wildlife biologist as well. And tonight we're going to have a lot of fun. I hope you didn't get hit too hard by these storms. I mean, it was a mess out there a little while ago around the Lexington area, but we're going to carry on. First of all, I want to touch base with you. We did a show not too long ago. Before the questions start coming in, white nose syndrome in bats. How's that going?
White nose syndrome in bats is an ongoing struggle, and we found our first infected site here in Kentucky.
Let's talk real quick. What is that?
White nose syndrome is a fungus that caused the deaths of probably close to 2 million or plus bats in the northeastern, and it's moved into the southeastern part of the United States. And we haven't seen any mortality in Kentucky yet, but there's a fungus associated with the disease that grows on the bats while they're in hibernation, and ultimately causes them to be go through their fat reserves a little too quick, and they come out of hibernation early and either die of starvation, dehydration, or exposure.
Now, did that not start somewhere else?
It did. It started, we first found it up in New York back in 2006, and it's since then moved through the Northeast fairly quickly into the Southeast and over into western states. Oklahoma has a confirmed case, and Missouri as well.
So we do have, how many have we found here in Kentucky?
We found one cave infected this past April, and we searched about 100 or so. We have a pretty aggressive surveillance and monitoring program set up in the state, and of the 100 or so we checked and rechecked probably a handful of those, we identified our first cave.
Wow.
Yeah.
I suppose you have to be careful just going back and forth because that stuff can...
Well, once you go in, whatever you take in there is dedicated to that cave, and then any other subsequent caves that are found infected. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
so
that's bad news.
Yeah.
Liz from Bourbon County, are there any rattlesnakes in Bourbon County?
No, there are no rattlesnakes in Bourbon County.
And let's go ahead and there's a few rules that apply to where certain kind of snakes are, and if you will kind of give us an idea. What
Okay, well, the timber rattlesnake, for example, it's found across the state except in the bluegrass. There has never been a natural population of timber rattlesnakes in any county in the bluegrass region. I mean, I did go to the UK Arboretum about 3 years ago, and they had a rattlesnake there, but its rattle had been cut off and it was all infected, and I think it was probably, this was in like the end of June. I think probably some UK student had caught it and kept it in his dorm or something, and then turned it loose in the Arboretum before leaving school. So, but we don't have them in the bluegrass.
Gotcha. Kathy's from Anderson County. What type of hummingbirds do we have in Kentucky?
Well, Tim, the most common we have is the ruby-throated, and those are seen all across the state, and we've had some questions this year in terms of numbers, variations, but it can be cyclical. We just tell folks keep their feeders clean. We've had a lot of rainfall across the state, and we've had a lot of different things blooming, so there's been a lot of opportunity for birds to feed out in different areas. So don't be disturbed if you don't see as many as you think you should. They're there, but ruby throat is most common.
Debbie's from Paris, Kentucky, and wants to know, do all bats carry rabies?
That's a good question, Tim. No, not all bats carry rabies. Bats, just like any other mammal, can contract rabies, but they do not all. Just because you see a bat does not mean that it has rabies. They are one of the more common animals associated with rabies, but I think that leads more to myths than it does reality.
Billy's from Harlan. And he wants to know.
I was there this week.
We know that goes to you.
He wants to know. Now, you know what? I don't know how some things get started. If Fish and Wildlife's dropping rattlesnakes, polar bears, some helicopters, all kinds of crazy stuff. But he wants to know, how much money does Fish and Wildlife pay for green snakes?
That's a really interesting story right now. 3 years ago I started getting calls, and they heard that we were paying $50 for a green snake because they were becoming endangered, and a year later it was up to $250, and then it was up to $500. Now this year,
Inflation.
just this week, someone asked if we were paying $1,000 for green snakes.
Maybe,
we're not paying anything.
Maybe
for
they're
green
like an economic indicator, like gold. And did you check the rates against the price?
Yeah, well, they do have some gold color in the eyes. So, but no, green snakes are found in every county in the state. They're not real common, but they're not endangered or anything. And no, we do not buy green snakes from people.
All right, Steve's from Mount Vernon. Are cowsuckers real?
A cowsucker, that's a great name. I love that name. And it's another name for the rat snake. And cow snake, cowsucker, pilot snake, black snake, all these different names. But they're all rat snakes, and they hang around barns a lot because that's where the rodents are and the pigeons and other things they eat. And people just kind of put two and two together, snake in the barn, cows not giving milk.
Those dang snakes.
But snakes do not drink milk from cows. Yeah. But I still like the name cowsucker.
That's pretty interesting. All right, Jeff is from Webster County. What about all the armadillos at LBL right now? He's apparently seen armadillos in there. Is that the case?
I have seen, this year, I've probably seen 10 or 12 armadillos at LBL. I mean, they are there. This year, we've had 2 armadillos found run over in Rowan County, Moorhead area. We had a live armadillo, one of our biologists saw at Beaver Creek Wildlife Area. We've even got one as far east as Knott County in eastern Kentucky. And they're becoming common from about I-65 west. So really? I've seen several on the West Kentucky Parkway this year.
I wonder what they taste like.
In the condition I see them in, they probably have a lot of gravel.
This is the Wildlife Diversity Show, but can you take them?
Can you get leprosy from
the armadillo is it's a natural reservoir of leprosy. So it's a good idea not to eat them.
Okay, I'm not
but one reason they get run over so much is because when they're crossing the road, when you surprise an armadillo, it jumps straight up in the air. And if you straddle one with your car, if it's a possum, it just sits there. But an armadillo goes, it'll jump up and it has no chance.
Okay, Cecil's from Eddyville, Kentucky. That's it down there, Eddyville. What has happened to the whippoorwills in Kentucky? We're going to get a bunch of these questions tonight. I have people asking me this all the time. People are noticing here and there that they're not hearing as many whippoorwills. We
have had a lot of concern about whippoorwills for a couple of years, and there are some different surveys going on right now to try to get some of the night jars and some of the night-dwelling birds. Most of it, we think, is habitat related, and certainly these are birds that like a certain stage of forest growth. We also have concerns about their wintering grounds because what we do here affects the birds and how their nesting works out, but also when they go south in the winter, if they go down to where home for the winter is and things have changed there, it really makes it difficult for them to have a successful year to come back and breed.
All righty, Mike is from Kenton County, and he noticed, now I've had a lot of people say, man, you're not telling the truth. White pelicans down on the Barkley in Kentucky. Where are they from and where are they going?
We get a lot of different calls about those types of things, and
they're there in great numbers. I've seen them fishing down there. Pelicans, I mean white pelicans.
Things move up and down rivers a lot. I'm just going to be, I just had a picture of several years ago, a story, but you know, if they're seeing them, that's great. If they want to report them to us, take a picture, send it in. We like to document these, especially if it's a new county record. You know, they're not crazy. We have a lot of interesting things. It's just like the armadillos. When they started moving, you know, people were like, you're not going to believe this. I had this called in. But we do like to document it. So let us know what you're seeing out there.
Now, Mike wants to know about a copperhead. What do they look like? How can you, a lot of people mistake so many snakes, water snakes, so on and so forth. Give us the real deal on the copperhead. Don't bring one out of your bag. Don't bring one.
A copperhead is a chunky snake. A big one might be 2.5, 3 feet long, and maybe that big around if it's a real big one. The neck is slender and the head is thick, fairly triangular. But the snake itself is like two-tone brown with dark brown hourglass markings if you look straight down and on a light background. The head is generally some shade of copper to dull orange. The main thing, you can see this from a distance in a copperhead, the pupils of the eyes are vertical like a cat in normal daylight, and and then they become round when in dim light. So at night a pupil would be almost round, but if you shine a flashlight on the thing, its eyes will contract instantly just like a cat's. And then right in front of the eye, on each side of the head, there's a deep pit. And it's deep enough that you could stick a dull point of a lead pencil in. And those are the heat-sensitive organs on a copperhead. And they can sense 1/10 of a degree at about 2 feet away, and that's how they hunt at night. They can sense the heat from a mouse, and they can strike it accurately. So,
now let's go ahead and take care of this. We're going to get it. Ray's from Jefferson County. Have we, Fish and Wildlife, found any evidence of mountain lions around Mammoth Cave Park or anywhere in Kentucky as far as that goes?
I don't know.
You know,
I believe we have an occasional mountain lion that is probably not native. I know I have what I consider unquestionable records from several people where they watched them for 30 seconds, a minute. I think Mike Henshaw, one of our wildlife biologists, was turkey hunting at Land Between the Lakes and watched one for like 30 seconds.
I get quite a few reports of large elusive felines during the summer.
But most of the calls I get, you know, it's everything gets quiet, you know, and then the bird stops singing, and then the hair stands up on the person's neck, and then this black panther strolls into the yard, you know. And I tend to not believe those.
Yeah.
Bob is from Union County, and he says he's seen a hummingbird with a yellow dot on its forehead and wants to know if it's been marked for some reason. Are any birds tagged for studies? Or
That could be, but that's not something I'm familiar with. Usually if they were going to be marked, it would be some type of wing or leg marking. Small bands, hummingbirds are difficult to mark, but different methods are out. If it looked like it was like a small plastic, very small plastic disc, that would be a possibility, but we could check into that. We're not doing any marking here.
Okay, let's address this because we're going to get a lot of calls on this tonight. It's Jessica Sperling from Bullitt County. Purple boxes in trees. Let's go ahead and explain what that's all about. So, because I see them all the time, I know what they are. But who wants to discuss that? That'd be you, wouldn't it? I don't want to
I'm thinking that those are for they're to attract emerald ash borers, so we can track the spread of that beetle.
Now, explain what that is, if you will. What is an emerald ash borer?
Well, it's a small metallic green beetle, but the larva bores into the bark of ash trees, and it eventually kills the ash trees. And this is a species that was transported into the state and probably in firewood. And so the Division of Forestry urges people to not take firewood from one area to another, because you'll have these larvae in the firewood and they'll come out, and then that infects a whole new area. And white ash is a really important tree in Kentucky, and this has the capability of perhaps even eliminating the white ash from the state.
Rita says snakes do get milk from cows. She has seen it. And if you'll document that, that would be cool. I'd like to see a picture, and I'm sure you would too.
If she would send a photo of that.
Or video.
Or video.
Yeah. I mean,
would you pay for that?
Yeah, I think I would pay for that.
If you can get us footage of that, he will pay you. He's not saying how much, but he will pay you something. Mike is from Indiana. He's noticed there are no hickory nuts or acorns in Indiana. Are the trees in Kentucky barren as well? Does that qualify as a question on our show tonight? I guess it's non-game.
I don't know. All I can tell you is I was under an oak camping, and
bunch?
there it was loaded.
Yeah, I've seen a lot.
Yeah. Mass crops look different from what I've seen.
Yeah, a lot of times, some oaks and hickories fruit every other year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility. Sometimes you have bad weather. Oaks flower really early, and you may have a total loss of pollination one year because of
Frost
weather
or something,
conditions.
yeah.
You know what? We're getting a lot of questions on this. We may as well address it, and we're getting ready to do a documentary on this right now. Derek is from Knox County, wants to know where the largest concentration of wild hogs are. Wild hogs are not something we want in Kentucky. And you see a lot of hunting shows where people glorify this sport of a barnyard animal. It's basically a pig that's been turned loose. Now, what happens when you turn these pigs loose? They breed like crazy. They tear up farmers' crops. They carry all kinds of diseases. What type of disease do they carry that people can get as well as other animals? So we're doing a documentary on these guys. If you like your deer and turkey, you don't want the pigs, correct?
Yeah, and Tim, another important point, talking about it's not only farmers' crops tearing up, but we have a big concern. One of our biggest problems with a lot of wildlife sometimes is the vegetation. And when you get hogs coming in and tearing up an area like that, you can really open up some area for some exotic or some invasive species that we don't want that can really get some problems going on the landscape. So it's many-fold.
All right, there's a bunch of these, and I don't know, this is not, I suppose, wildlife diversity, but people are apparently got a bunch of raccoons. What can you do to keep the raccoons out? I suppose if they don't hunt them, they're
Keep them out of
wildlife
wet
diversity.
because they can get in anything.
I suggest they watch Billy the Exterminator. He has many ideas.
live traps.
Yep.
Kim is from Grayson. Now, I'm not sure what this question means, but are there any Mexican buzzards in Kentucky?
I'm not sure what they're referring to as a Mexican buzzard. We have black vultures and turkey vultures here, and obviously the black vulture has a black head, and the legs will appear more whitish, and the turkey vulture has a red head, but I'm not sure what they're calling a Mexican.
Okay. Bob is from Boone County. We're getting a bunch, imagine that, of snake questions. And he wants to know the farthest north cottonmouths are found. So many people mistake water snakes for cottonmouths. Now, where is their range?
Okay, mostly in the Jackson Purchase. That's the western 8 counties. There are a few at Land Between the Lakes. There are some sites in the western Coalfield, especially Hopkins County has a good population, like on Clear Creek and then along the Tradewater River. But the furthest east and the furthest north is in Davis County. That's maybe 10 miles out of Owensboro. And then there's another colony in Butler County on the Mud River in an old oxbow swamp. So that's the furthest east and furthest north that we have them. There's one site in Indiana, but I think they're considered to be exterminated there now. Cottonmouths are not in central or eastern Kentucky.
We had you on a couple years ago when we had the big explosion of locusts. I don't remember. I don't know if it was a 17-year or 13, whichever one it was. Ken is from Florence. He says, which ones do we have this year? He's seen a lot in his areas around Florence. Which ones do we have?
Earlier this year, I don't think we had them that far east. I mean, the ones that are out now that's called the Dog Day cicada, and you have those every year.
Right.
And they seem unusually loud this year.
Yes, they do.
They do.
But we did have a big emergence in western Kentucky. It was, I think it was called Brood 19. It started about Beaver Dam and went west to Land Between the Lakes. And I actually drove around with my GPS unit and tried to get coordinates where the emergence ended and began. So as soon as I drove across Kentucky Lake into Marshall County, like Ken Lake and Kentucky Dam Village, they weren't there, but Land Between the Lakes, they were there. So it just ended. It was pretty interesting,
That is
I think.
Rodney's from Boyle County. Are there any more Bigfoot in Lawrenceburg? They finally solved that problem. They have spotted the Bigfoot, and it was McGregor out at night looking for, and that's exactly what it is. Sometimes he howls when he finds a big, cool salamander. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kentucky Bigfoot right there. Crawling around at night through the woods. I know you do it, so there you go.
Hey, everybody and his brother has a trail camera, a cell phone.
There you go.
Sooner or later. If there are Bigfoots here, we're going to
get.
get a good photo
I
of
think
one.
someone's got some good pictures of Sonny and I on a trail camera.
Yeah.
You know, these guys actually do work very hard, crawling around the woods and studying.
I try not to crawl.
The only thing
but
we
you
would
have to in
ask-
caves sometimes.
Yeah.
If they could lower that flash level for when you
I
are
know,
working at
'cause
night, because
that's
that
just
really
not-
startles you every single
Yeah.
time you walk by it. Somebody's got about 40
It's not
photos of
flattering
us.
either.
Tell you,
No, it's
when,
not
when a
flattering.
deer snorts at you
Yeah.
Is that why you?
at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I mean,
Is that what makes you holler?
it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck.
All right, Richard Davis is from Scott County. I'll tell you what, while we're answering this question, if you don't mind, maybe we could get your little critter out there. Let's talk about
Sonny's
owls.
buddy.
And the question is from Richard, are owls attack birds? Well, my Banty chickens think so because they're not around anymore. And I found little remains of them in their
If they could
little
see
pellets.
inside here right now, they might tend to say yes.
You know, hawks make pellets too.
Oh, do they? Yeah. Okay, I tell you, if you see me throwing a question out here, there's a reason for that because we get a lot of the same questions, and I don't want to ask them more than once. Okay, Joel is from Russell County, and are there scorpions in Kentucky?
Yeah, and Russell County has lots of them.
Little bitty
We have
things.
one species. It's a pretty tiny thing. It's called the southern unstriped scorpion, or if you look it up on the UK website, it's the southern devil scorpion. But
I like
in
that.
eastern Kentucky, it gets up to the Kentucky River in Estill County. Haven't found it across the river, and then it gets in western Kentucky. It gets up to up into Fort Knox and Otter Creek Park in their area. I have never found a scorpion in the bluegrass. But like at the far southern end of Harrington Lake, there are a few. You kind of get into the knobs down there. They're pretty much in the knobs, and then they're real common in like Laurel, McCreary, Whitley, down along the southern border, all the way across to about Allen County.
All right, let's talk about your little buddy there, Sonny.
All right. Well, Tim, this is an eastern screech owl, and hopefully folks will look at maybe the camera and not you all, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. A lot of folks see this little guy and they say, oh, look at the baby. This is not a baby. This owl is full grown, and she came to the department. She had been hit by a car and has a wing injury, and so won't be released, and so she's used back at the Slato Education Center. And in fact, when I went to pick him up this afternoon, it was out on the glove and was being used in a program. Eastern screech owls are very common throughout the state. There are two color phases. There's the red phase and the gray phase, and just a little bit of owl biology that's pretty interesting. If you can see the little tufts up here as he looks at me, but there's some feathers. It looks like ear tufts. They don't have ears sticking out like we do, but they have an opening there. And if you can see, if he would turn for you, if you could see the feathers around the face, around the eyes, they form a disc, and that actually helps to divert sound into their ears. They have some little modified hairs that look like whiskers coming off the front. Helps them with their hunting. When they fly at night, owls are really cool. All owls have on the back of the feather, on the trailing edge, it's kind of rough and almost barbed looking, and that helps to cut down on noise at night. And if you've ever done a lot of working at night, and if you've been climbing looking into their cavities at night, it's always good to have on a hard hat because they will knock you in the back of the head, and you'll never hear them coming. So they've got a lot of really neat features. These little guys have a really varied diet. We did a lot of food habit work with them for about 4 years, and we found them eating everything from small frogs to, we found cardinal remains in one of ours, and we actually had a video set up in nest boxes.
UK fan.
Yeah, it was obviously a UK fan. We didn't find any bobcats or anything in there. So,
Hey, real quick, who here wants to do like a screech owl sound so people can know what they sound like?
I think Tim wants to.
No.
I do.
Isn't that the
can't do it.
consistency?
No. That Brooke, I think you should do that.
I just heard one last night.
And it goes.
Oh,
Really?
it's like,
It's a whinny.
yeah.
That's very
Not
good.
bad.
And what about the?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it can be
Y'all just
scary.
go ahead and make fools out of yourself.
hey, we're good
How
at
about
that.
you?
That's what we
We're
do.
gonna make you make it like northern pine snake noises here.
I tell you what, a lot, you know, as far as a lot of our folks that maybe live in town, if they are out in their backyard in the evenings, if there's some trees around, if you know, some mature trees and it's wooded, it would not be uncommon to hear screech owls in you know, older neighborhoods. They're very adaptable. They take really well to nest boxes.
They make pretty cool sounds.
And they eat lots of moths and different insects at night too. So.
All right, let's get back to the questions. Dan is from down around Dale Hollow Lake, and he says, "Are there jellyfish in Kentucky?" And I get that call all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
They
just
are,
little bitty fellers.
Well,
About big as a
yeah,
quarter?
I've seen them about that big. I mean, and you see them when you're fishing at night.
Yeah.
Like down in, like Laurel River Lake has them, Woods Creek Lake. But we have native freshwater jellyfish in a lot of streams, but they have a different form. It kind of looks like a gelatinous crust on the underside of a rock, and that's just a different form of the same jellyfish. So the Medusa form is the thing he's seeing, and that's the the thing that people think of when they see a jellyfish.
You know, we're getting a bunch of these questions for folks who might just be tuning in. Richard's from Nelson County, and he wants to know, have bats in Kentucky been exposed to the white nose? Let's talk about it just a second. It was at the top of the show. We do have
a confirmed site of with white nose syndrome. We found it this past April. So we have had infected bats in Kentucky, which is not surprising because Tennessee has several infected sites. Indiana has several infected sites, in Ohio as well. And they found the fungus, Geomyces destructans, which is associated with the disease in Missouri. So we were pretty much surrounded. I think Illinois is still holding out, but yeah, we did find our first case, and it was in Trigg County, which is in western Kentucky.
Mike is from Jefferson County. He's seeing lizards. What type of lizards do we have in Kentucky?
In Jefferson County, it's a 5-line skink, and they are very common in some neighborhoods. I find them in Louisville about every time I go snake hunting there. Which, speaking of snake hunting in Louisville,
That's right.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get something out.
yeah, let me get these out. This is one of the rarest species of snakes in the state. It's called a Kirtland snake. This is a big one, right? This is about as big as they get. And it's like a little garter snake looking thing with a bright red belly with black dots on it. And these guys live in earthworms. Live in vacant lots and they feed on earthworms. So anyway, I've been in the state for 40 years or so, and I had found a total of 1 Kirtland snake in Kentucky until this year.
Wow.
And I got a call from a guy over in Louisville who was working on a water line in March, and he dug up a Kirtland snake hibernating in a crayfish hole. And so I was kind of excited about it. And the next day he called me and said, well, I found another one. He took a picture of it and sent it to me. So I went over there, and it's in an area around Bishop's Lane, all these warehouses and things. So I started going over there and setting out pieces of plywood, and I have found about 50 Kirtland snakes.
So cool.
Just within kind of the Indian Trail, Bishop Lane area. And it's just amazing how common they are over there.
You know what? If you didn't really know your snakes that well, you could easily mistake that for a small garter snake, couldn't you?
Yeah,
Except for
I
that
mean,
red
these
belly.
things, they're totally harmless. But Louisville has by far the biggest population in Kentucky. And this is an urban snake.
Wow.
And throughout its range. I mean, Toledo, Cincinnati, Indianapolis. So it's pretty neat. But the other place in Kentucky where we have these is the Terrapin Creek area down in Graves County on the Tennessee line, which is wild country. I mean, there's not a warehouse or a factory or a roadside dump or anything, and they're in native wetland habitat down there. It's just really neat. So I was just so excited about finding these.
Excellent.
So
well, we'll get something else out in a minute, but let's get back to a few questions. Angie from McGoffin County, how can you get rid of mosquitoes? Can you build bat houses? Will that help?
Well, mosquitoes are part of a bat's diet, kind of like popcorn's a part of our diet. It's more of a snack item. It's not a primary prey item for them. So I do always encourage people to install bat houses. If they're installed properly and if they're the right kind, you can attract bats there, and that's not a bad thing. They're not going to go into your house from the bat house. So, you know, people have told me when they see bats that they feel like the mosquitoes are reduced. So I think there could be some correlation to that, but like I said, it's not a primary part of their diet.
Mark is from Ripley County, Indiana. He saw a black salamander with yellow spots in Red River Gorge. Said it was about 3 inches long with yellow spots.
Okay, there are two possibilities. Spotted salamander, and that has like 2 rows of yellow spots running down the back. And spotted salamanders get to be pretty big, like 6-7 inches long. Usually you see them crossing roads in the rain. But if he's out on a hiking trail and found it under a log, it's probably a slimy salamander, which is black with kind of gold spots all over it.
Are they slimy?
They're called that because when you handle them, the secretion comes out of their skin and it gets all over you, and you can't get it off. And the next day, your fingers are all brown.
I wouldn't want to handle it. Todd is from Boone County. Saw 2 Orioles in his yard. How common are they? And is there anything you can do to keep them around? Anything you do to?
They are very common across the state, and they like to build that hanging nest. If get a nice big mature tree, almost like a park setting, where they can kind of build on that outer branch and hang it down. They like fruits. You could take and put some orange slices or halves out, things like that, just to keep them around a little bit. But yeah, they're pretty common.
James is from Ohio, and he wants to know, where do you find the most rattlesnakes in Kentucky? If you had one particular area where there are more rattlesnakes, where would that be?
You know, there are a few places where there are really good rattlesnake populations. Bernheim Forest has got a good population. Land Between the Lakes has a pretty good population. Northern Casey County in the Knobs is a pretty good rattlesnake population. Pine Mountain has a good population. I got a call from a graduate student last week that was getting ready to leave the state and never seen a rattlesnake, and so I suggested he go to Kingdom Come State Park, which is a pretty good place, and the park superintendent down there used to be a park naturalist, Rick Fuller. So we have a number of places where you have a good shot at seeing rattlesnakes in the state.
Don is from Jefferson County. He witnessed a deranged squirrel. A squirrel killed a chipmunk. Turf war? What's going on there?
All squirrels are deranged, I can tell.
Have you ever heard anything like that?
No, but you know, I know chipmunks will prey on young birds, and it may well be that the chipmunk got a young squirrel out of the nest and
defense.
And this gray, I've never heard of a gray squirrel doing anything like that. But chipmunks they can be bad dudes.
I didn't know.
Naughty little chipmunks.
Yeah, they get
Mike wants to know, what do you do to get rid of muskrats?
Trap them.
Shoot them, Elizabeth.
All our nuisance wildlife control operators.
That's right. Call your
website.
Yeah, we do offer. That's a good point. We have a list of licensed nuisance wildlife control operators.
You know, if you do shoot a muskrat in the water, be conscious of where that bullet goes. I mean, if you shoot a shotgun, it can be pretty effective, but they can tear up some ponds.
Are they ornery?
Oh, they're ornery. Kind of like your little buddy chipmunks. Mike is from Barron County. Copperheads. What is their habitat, and what counties are they most common in? You surprised me a couple years ago when we were out looking for stuff and doing a show. You said that's one of the most common snakes in Kentucky. That blew my mind.
Yeah, the copperhead is very common in most of the wooded areas of the state. If you don't like copperheads, live in the bluegrass. We still have a few counties we don't have a record from. You know, Bourbon County, Harrison County, Scott County. So they're probably really rare in those counties. But in the bluegrass, the only place they're even borderline common is right along the Kentucky River cliffs, where it's steep and rocky. But in eastern Kentucky, I would say that's the commonest snake. Mammoth Cave National Park, they're abundant throughout the Knobs, throughout the western coalfield, land between the lakes. There was a girl at Murray State trying to do a study to estimate the population, and she caught and marked 400 copperheads over 2 years, had one recapture. So if you calculate the population based on the acreage, I mean, it would be millions just at land between the lakes.
Wow.
So that is a very common snake, but it's very well disguised in the woods, and you just don't see them.
Becky's from Boone County. Do you find flying squirrels in northern Kentucky?
Yes. If you want to see flying squirrels, go out in the wintertime, find a hollow tree or a tree with a hole in it and beat on it a couple times with a baseball bat. First time I tried it, it worked.
Really?
I've tried it 100 times since then. It didn't.
I've been actually
Or set up a net
squirrel
for
hunting.
bats.
Yeah.
Squirrel hunting with dogs, and have a dog, and it's the three little heads peek out, and there, you know, it'd be flying squirrels. We didn't shoot them.
I hear them at night a lot. You hear they have a high-pitched twitter,
Yeah.
and just any woods you go in, you hear flying squirrels.
Linda's from Madison County. Are there bald eagles in Madison County?
I don't remember this year if they had a report or not, but we've got record numbers of eagle nests this year. I believe we ended up with 98 across the state. And I'm glad we got an eagle question. We've got something really neat that we've had going on. We had 2 young birds that we put backpack transmitters on. They send a signal out, it goes up to satellite. Satellite sends us information back, and we can actually track these 2 birds, and you can get on our website and you can find that link and you can watch those birds, because we didn't really know where these young were going. We didn't know if they were staying local, going east-west. We've got one that's been up to Wisconsin, been to Iowa, Illinois, it's back home. We've really learned a lot about their movement.
Midwest.
Yeah, gone out the Midwest.
Ethan is from Breathitt County. Are there peregrine falcons in Kentucky?
Absolutely. Again, record number of nesting birds this year, 13 pair. And that is definitely a result of our restoration program that was carried out through the early mid-90s.
Bill's from Fayette County. We're getting so many questions. I want to go ahead and address this just briefly. Talking about Asian carp, we are very aware of this huge problem. It's kind of the same type of deal as we have with the pigs. They're not supposed to be here. There's a lot of work being done. We're working on a documentary right now for our show to talk about these critters and how in the world we're going to get rid of them, coming up shortly. We are very aware of those. Carrie's from Bowling Green. Is there a state law that protects skunks? They have a family of them under their house.
Aww.
Are they protected?
If you have a family of skunks under your house, I would recommend you calling a professional, seriously, nuisance control operator, and we do have a
Yes.
list on our website. And I
Hey,
would
by the
let
way,
them
if they want
handle
to call this particular number, which is 1-800-858-1549, that's 1-800-858-1549. We got some good folks that will help you find numbers like that. And also, if you want to write us, it's number 1 Sportsman's Lane, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. And it's for you computer folks, fw.ky.gov. Am I correct in that?
Yep, sounds good.
How about that? All right, Kathy is from Logan County. Red-tailed hawks, do they eat roadkill?
Not unless it's fresh, or you see it on the road and maybe it took it down, but they don't usually feed on carrion.
I tell you what, in the wintertime, I had a red-tailed hawk come in on a deer I had just recently killed.
If it's very fresh.
It was very fresh, and he got a couple bites out before I could stop him. Seriously, I'm like, hey, that's mine.
How did you
If
stop
we
him?
could get that on the trail cam.
Yeah.
Well, I just, right.
Man versus wild.
I'll tell you what, though, if they keep getting my chickens, I'm going to have to call somebody. Connie's from Garrett County. Black widow spider, are they deadly? What happens if you get bit? What should you do?
Okay, they can kill a human being. I think the statistics I saw on it was, I mean, it's somewhere around like maybe 2% of the bites might be fatal if they're not treated. And black widow spiders are very common in the state. Usually though you find them in a rock pile or a wood pile or a place that gets a lot of sun. I find them when you leave the lawnmower out in the backyard for 2 weeks and don't put it away, and then you lift it up to get the grass off the blade, there will often be a black widow under it. So, I mean, they're pretty common, but they're very reluctant to bite, and
Good.
you don't have to really worry about them. But if you are bitten, you need to call a doctor and have somebody look at it, because it can be a really serious bite.
Orville is from McCracken County, and he wants to know, what time of year do the purple martins leave Kentucky?
What are we in, August now? We're going to see them, excuse me, heading out probably here about 6 more weeks. You'll see them moving a lot. We had a lot of calls this spring where we had a lot of martins that were dead. And I know this is a little bit of sidetrack from his question, but just to address our folks out there that were interested, we submitted a lot of martins this spring. We had them reported on roadways, acting very strange, flying strange, and all the reports came back as trauma. And they're thinking that with the rain events and the weather events, that insect numbers, sometimes they'll forage in different places, and they think that they actually were foraging in a group and got hit, and that was causing the trauma. It was a strange spring. We had several counties that reported martins acting strangely, and we submitted several birds.
I told you. Here it is. Larry is from Muhlenberg County, and he's heard that they release rattlesnakes. What's the method of delivery?
UPS preferred
UPS.
overnight.
Little parachutes.
Little parachutes to take care of the
Little
turkey
backpacks.
population. Larry, I'm not laughing at you, but this is so widely, you hear it everywhere you go. You get calls, you get calls, you get calls. We're not doing that. First of all, we like our turkey population. I don't know where it came from. Do you have any idea?
No, the most logical thing I've heard came from, I was talking to some of the conservation officers, and they think that was started by some marijuana growers who were trying to find ways to keep people out of the woods, which makes sense to me. But, you know, a rattlesnake, a timber rattlesnake adult might weigh 10 pounds. And if you put 10 of those in a bag and dropped it out of a helicopter, I mean, it would, you can just imagine, they would just go splat. I mean, they would not survive that. And the second thing wrong with that is that timber rattlesnakes are mammal eaters. They're not bird eaters. So they feed on mice, small squirrels, chipmunks, that sort of thing. Only rarely would they eat a bird, and it would be maybe something like a young ruffed grouse.
Now, if you notice me throwing a lot of stuff in the trash can over here, I think we need to reiterate, this is the non-game or wildlife diversity show. So if we get any questions about hunting or fishing, we do have a hunting call-in show coming up in November, and in the spring we always have a fishing show. Tonight, only about critters that you don't necessarily hunt, which is called wildlife diversity, which is a whole bunch of stuff, such as Leon from Perry County has bats in his belfry. So what can you do?
That is a very common question that I get, especially in June and July. And June and July is the maternity season for bats in Kentucky. That's when a lot of young are being born, and then they start flying around, and they get into people's houses. And I kind of equate the juveniles flying around, the ones that get into your house, to 16-year-olds with their license. And they sometimes take a wrong turn and end up in a cornfield. That's what those bats are doing. So it's good that we have that question. I wanted to bring up the fact that we have a Report a Bat website on our webpage. And if you find bats in your house, you have a colony of bats in your house, or you see anything unusual with any bats, please report it online. And that comes directly to me, and I'll send you a response or telephone call. But if you get a bat in your house, don't panic. There's several ways to get it out don't use a broom. You can just use a coffee can with a piece of cardboard, trap it, let it go. Or if you don't want to mess with that, you can just leave a door open, turn all the lights off. It'll find its way out. If you have a colony, 2 ways to go about it. There's do-it-yourself instructions that can be found online, or you can, again, go to our nuisance wildlife control operator list that's on our website.
Pete is from Fayette County, and squirrels are eating his green tomatoes. Now that would just make me mad. He wants to know how you get rid of them. Well, very shortly, squirrel season begins.
Deranged squirrels.
Deranged squirrels.
Eating
And you know
tomatoes.
what? Revenge is sweet, saith the crock pot. Tell you what, they've
That
been
should be a
wearing,
recipe. You need to come up with a recipe called that.
let me tell you what, they've been wearing out my pears. I mean, wearing them out. And that just makes me very
Squirrel
upset.
sauteed with pears. That sounds good.
Get it out. Patsy from Harrison County, do we have tarantulas in Kentucky? Found one that was bigger than a wolf spider, and it had big hairy legs. Found it in the basement.
We have no classical tarantulas. We do have some trapdoor spiders, which are related to the tarantulas. They're in that family. But, you know, if you find a spider you think might be a tarantula, if you can get a photograph of it and email it to me, I'd be glad to look at it. But we do have, you know, the Carolina wolf spider has a leg span about like that. So, and that's a big spider. And we've got several kinds of fishing spiders that have huge, big leg spans and real hairy legs also.
Oh, wait a minute, we got a new one. And I think his name's Enoch from Boyd County. Are they importing Japanese beetles to feed turkeys? It's a new one. You ever heard that?
It's the first time
I don't
I've
think we
heard
need to
that, and
import
let's
them.
take this opportunity to
They
stop
have been
that.
here.
Yeah.
Japanese beetles have
yeah.
been here for as long as I've been here.
And
so.
Debbie from Bourbon County is asking why she's not seeing any Japanese beetles this year. So
This is
She's
not a
living
good year.
right.
not a good year.
I have not. I've seen very few
Yeah, I
Japanese
haven't seen
beetles
very
this
many
year.
this
That's not a
And
bad
usually
thing.
they eat all the leaves off the Virginia creeper on the side of
Yep.
my house, and this year it's just
She's
They've
got
left
the
a
cream.
it's
lot.
just lush and green, you know. Like
By the
it
way,
should
we
be.
are not stocking Japanese beetles to feed turkeys.
And we do not stock those Oriental ladybugs that are going to be a big pest this fall. I mean, those things got here, I think, through the ecological control companies that sold ladybugs to people to control the aphids. And
That's right. Actually, down in Texas is where a lot of that got started, and
yeah,
I can
Texas
tell
that stocked those ladybugs.
Texas,
Don't
from the
vacuum them
history
up.
that I've read, yes, they were used to control some aphids, I believe. I want to say on cotton, but
My
it was
dad
a
loves to
cotton.
vacuum those up, and they stink so bad. They will ruin your vacuum cleaner. It's disgusting.
At one of the
Ew.
state parks in the fall, they come in and they're just carpeting the ceiling. That's it. I guess I shouldn't say the name on. But it's Cumberland Falls State Park. It's such a nice park.
They
you
have
know,
taken care of that
and you're
problem.
walking down the hallway and here's thousands of Oriental ladybugs
They
on
should
the ceiling.
especially rent that room.
Uh,
Jack the rate.
everybody wants to know how to get rid of moles. This is Stacy, and there's a bunch of them. How do you get rid of moles?
Cats.
One way, there's a mole trap you can buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are like a
Yeah,
medieval-looking device.
Yeah.
Basically it spears
Spears.
them. You put that in their burrow. Those sunflower things that people put in their yards that the wind blows them and they vibrate, those are surprisingly good at discouraging moles. They don't like the vibrations.
And again, I'm getting a whole bunch of questions on hunting and fishing. We do
There's
have a
6
hunting and
cats
fishing
that
show, but
run
tonight
around
again is
outside.
wildlife
They'll get
diversity. Scott is from Nelson County. Woodpeckers with white on their bodies.
Woodpeckers with white on their bodies could be a number. It could be pileated.
That's the big one.
Yeah, that's
Explain what they look like.
those are the really large ones that look kind of like Woody Woodpecker, and they are very common across the state. They have kind of a big red crest when they get to looking nice there, big long beak. We've got several different species. If it's a large one, it's going to be pileated though.
All right, Mike is from Jefferson County. Little blue lizards.
That's the 5-line skink again, and the juveniles have a bright blue tail.
Yep.
And some of the adult females, then the males get red heads in May.
It says if they lose their tails, how long does it take them to grow back?
Usually within just a few months, and they never grow back blue. they come back gray. So you defaced your skink if you break its tail.
Russell Boone is from Russell County, and his cat killed a snake just like the one you showed on television in Russell County. And he wants you to know this.
Just like this one.
Oh,
Just like
boy.
the one he just showed.
Like the Kirtland.
You know, you never know what someone's going to find, but if you get a snake and you're not sure what it is, if you take a cell phone picture or a digital photo, send it to me. I love identifying pictures of snakes and lizards and salamanders and things people send in, and even insects.
We love
So,
going to the printer when John prints something out because it's always good. It's
Yeah, if it's
it's
really
photos
good,
of
I
somebody
print it
holding
out.
something
Print it out
looking
in color.
scared.
It's going on the fridge if it's really
Yeah,
good.
we have a lot of John
Do
art.
you have any more critters tonight?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
while we're asking a few more questions, Julie's from Greene County wants to know about brown recluse spiders. How do you get rid of them? Well, that's a good question because a lot of people have them. I've got them
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
and there.
I was going to get this guy out.
We'll come back to the brown recluse thing
yeah.
as you're digging through your pickle jar.
Okay. This is called a Black Mountain salamander, and it's kind of special to Kentucky. I mean, they get into the edge of West Virginia and Virginia and Tennessee.
I don't like the way he's looking at me.
But this is a type of dusky salamander, and this was actually first named as a species by Roger Barber, who used to teach at UK.
Right.
And this week, I wanted to get some photos of the nests. They nest this time of
He's
year.
going to jump.
And the
He's coming right for you,
Okay.
Tim.
whoa, there we go.
They're very
And the
athletic.
females lay eggs right at the edge of a creek under rocks. And I was on Black Mountain Thursday and Friday, where I used to be able to find hundreds of these in just like 15 minutes. And one site, I was there for half an hour, I found one. Another site, I found 3 in an hour. I mean, something has happened to these things. But anyway, the Black Mountain salamander is, I mean, it used to be the characteristic salamander of mountain streams in eastern Kentucky. And where I was on Pine Mountain and Black Mountain in these really pristine areas, and I'm concerned about these. So
Habitat loss.
somebody, some high school kid is just really gung-ho, you know, down in Knott County or somewhere like that, and wants to walk up and down a creek with a digital camera and find salamanders with eggs and take photos. I would love to.
Don't take them to your house. Just take pictures and send them to you,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just it's a really interesting species, and this is the largest of the eastern dusky salamanders, except for the black belly that's down in the Smokies. But these things reach 7 inches.
Wow.
I mean, that's a big salamander there.
Tori's from Barron County. Do turtles eat tomatoes out of the garden? Yes.
Oh, back to the brown recluse.
Yes.
What was the question?
How do you get rid of them? Because once they set up shop, it's tough.
Yeah, you know, we have them in our building,
Yes,
in
we
the
do.
fisheries lab. We have them in probably all the buildings at Fish and Wildlife. There's really no way to get rid of them that I know of. But, I mean, just get rid of things that make narrow crevices. You know, usually you find them where doors don't fit quite right. You know, Tracy found one in her office last year where she just had a picture frame laying up against the wall, and she went to pick it up and hang it up, and there was one under it. I don't worry about brown recluse spiders. I mean, they do have a bad bite, but it's hard to get one to bite.
Well, I'll tell you what. They
John
like
has
to
tried.
They like to get in your shoes, too, I've noticed.
Arachnophobia.
Yeah. Oof.
Remember when they got
I mean,
in
I've
shoes?
handled a lot of them, and I've never had one, you know, that even tried to bite me. I don't pick them up with my hands.
And I'm telling you what, we have got the most
How do you handle
mole
them?
questions I have ever seen in my
A
life.
file card or a piece of paper.
One thing, Tim, while you're looking at questions that I would like to follow up on, Brooke mentioned the reported bat form, and winter's going to be coming before we know it, and bats are going to be back in caves. And since we do have a confirmed site now with white-nose syndrome, one of the things that can happen is a lot of really strange behavior in the wintertime when it gets cold. Bats can leave the caves early. They can be on houses. They could be out on snowbanks, different things that you might see. And if you do, in fact, this winter, see some bats out and moving December, January, February, March, when you know they should be in hibernating, if you see something like that, if you would go to our website and let us know by filling out that form, that would really be a big help to us. We've got a really aggressive monitoring program, but you could help us catch some things early.
Okay, John is from Anderson County, and he wants to know about black panthers in Anderson County because he saw one on the 4th of July. And my question to John would be, obviously, we'd like for him to take a picture of this sort of thing, but how many do you have?
So I was gonna say, how many beers did you have?
Just wondering, John. I mean, black panthers?
Yeah, but I will say
Large,
this, it
elusive
kind of goes back
felines.
to some of these. I know in the early days, and Tim, you may have been in the fish lab when one of the calls that we got in, we've had some reports and the officers have gone and they've had on collars because people's pets get out. So
Yes, I remember
we do
that.
joke about this, but we don't think you're crazy sometimes. If you see something, pets do get out. So that would be what
And
you would
I would
be
not
seeing.
consider that a pet. Some people, I mean,
It would not be my pet of choice.
I was attacked by a monkey at
They'll rip your face off.
Kincaid Lake one time. It was it's a long story, but
How many did you have, Tim?
no, I didn't. I was at work.
What monkey attacked me? What monkey?
But it's a long story, and maybe we'll tell it sometime. But okay, Todd's from Jefferson County. Do hummingbirds migrate, and when?
Yes, and they'll be leaving out. Weather starts changing. When you start seeing flocks of birds, hummingbirds are going to go too.
Okay, James is from Fayette County. Greg is from Lincoln County. They're wanting to know about the bullfrogs. People seem to think that they're just not seeing as many bullfrogs as they have.
You know, I do frog surveys kind of routinely, and I have heard a lot of bullfrogs this year. But, you know, where I've been working is in, you know, from Mammoth Cave National Park West is where I've done most of my frog surveys, and they seem to be doing well, at least in western Kentucky. So I really don't have any information further east.
Okay, Kristen is from Madison County. How many different types of frogs? How many different types of frogs in Kentucky?
We used to have 20.
Used to have.
Now we have 22 because of good old Emily Lemon. She's one of those DNA people, I call them. And she's been looking at the DNA of our little bitty chorus frogs, and she has discovered that we actually have 2 species of chorus frogs and 2 species of cricket frogs,
okay.
where I thought
So
we had
nothing-
only one.
Nobody wrote in on the on the armadillo. Right?
Yeah, it's not anything that you could recognize, and so we're now working on some way to tell them apart, other than by grinding them up and
Putting them in a dish.
That's not going to work for
Run some
surveys.
drills.
yeah.
They don't call well.
So 20.
Vicky's from Nelson County. Is it common for beaver to come into a small lake? They're all over her lake and killing her trees. What can she do?
Ooh. Nuisance wildlife control
Yep.
operators found on our website.
1-800-858-1549. 1-800-858-1549. And you'll find somebody who can tell you who to call.
And beavers are quite common. They're
Yes.
much more common than people realize.
I thought you were going to say they're much more common.
I'll tell you what, we have had more fishing questions tonight. And that's why I have been throwing things in the trash again. I'm not trying to ignore any. All right, is it illegal, Jerry from Louisville, to kill pest animals, squirrels, groundhogs, such and such, if they're getting in your garden and eating your stuff? 1-800-858-1549.
No, you can get a nuisance control permit. And,
So if you have
yeah,
something...
if you're defending your home, you're fine.
Yeah, if that squirrel came right at you, you have a right to take it out.
Can you believe that this hour is almost over? We want to thank all the folks who are answering our phones tonight. They worked very hard, and we hope your power's back on. Obviously, if you're watching us, your power's back on, unless you're on a generator. Let's ask one more question. Chris is from Jefferson County. What are the different types of crayfish in Kentucky? How many?
There's a whole book, Crayfishes
book?
of Kentucky.
Yep.
I think we have 45 different kinds.
Goodness gracious.
And